Someone found me through a reel on Facebook and followed me over here. And he left me this comment. He said, I had to laugh at the idea of getting to the point of revealing my fetish to a woman. I've never gotten that far. Ever. At 24 years of age, I gave up trying to date. Full stop. A guy gets rejected or worse, friend-zoned by every woman he meets enough times, and there's no recovering from that. Then he kept going. He told me he's knocking on the door of 70. He did eventually get married at 40 to a woman 10 years older than him. Both of us got married out of a kind of quiet desperation. She didn't want to be alone, and I felt like if I didn't leap at the chance, it would never happen. That's not a good foundation for a marriage. And his wife passed away. He's alone again. And he ended his comment with, she was a good person. I'm a good person. So all in all, it wasn't a bad marriage. I had to sit with that for a minute. Not a bad marriage. That's what, 45 years of living by a rule written at 24? That's the saddest thing I read in a long time. Not a bad marriage, but not a chosen one either. A marriage of quiet desperation between two people who settled because they both stopped believing that anything better was possible. And now he's here at 70, watching my videos, which tells me something within him still hasn't given up. Some part of him still wants to know, what if the rule I created when I was 24 was wrong? That is what today's video is about. That rule. Where it comes from, how it quietly runs your entire life without your permission, and what you can actually do to interrupt it, because he's not an outlier. He's just the most honest version of something I see across this community every single day. Another man wrote to me, I tried twice to compliment a woman's feet. Crashed and burned both times. I'm too pessimistic to think I have that kind of luck. I've kept this suppressed ever since. 2 experiences, guys. 2 moments, and from them, his brain built a wall around his entire future. Someone else filled out my research form and wrote this. I feel like this is a deep personal flaw. Something wrong with me at a fundamental level. So not a behavior, not a pattern, not something that happened to him and could therefore change. So a permanent flaw. Well, none of that is true. But your brain is an extraordinary, extremely convincing storyteller. And today I'm going to show you exactly how it does it. And if you stay with me till the end of this video, also I'll tell you what to do about it. But before we go further, 3 quick things. If you're new here, hit the like and subscribe right now. I make this content for the man who is actually ready to do something about this, and I don't want you to miss what's coming. Second, the Freaking Shame Exit Kit is in the description. If you are in the loop right now, that is where you start, so go grab it. And third, if you want to support this show, my Patreon is linked below, and the 14-day self-command reset is going to come soon. Get on the waitlist now so you don't miss it. All the links are in the description below. All right, let's get into today's video. So guys, here's what's actually happening when your brain is telling you that you're broken, that women will always reject you, that you'll never change, that this is just who you are. Well, it is a brain mechanism that is called generalization. And it's not a flaw. It doesn't mean that your brain is broken somehow. It's just a feature of every human brain that has ever existed, including mine, as you'll see later in this video. And it is running your life from a background you can't see. Your brain, at its core, is a pattern recognition machine. Its primary job is not to make you happy. It's not to make sure you get the relationship you want or the life you want. No, the brain's main duty is to keep you alive and save energy doing it. And one of the most efficient ways it accomplishes that is by taking a small number of similar experiences and extracting a universal rule from them. This is actually genius when it works correctly. That's why you don't touch a stove more than once or maybe twice, right? And your brain writes that rule. Stove equals danger. Don't touch. So this way, you don't need to touch every stove in every kitchen for the rest of your life to keep learning that lesson. One or two times, one or two experiences are enough to create one universal rule. Done. Energy saved, fingers intact. The brain literally rewires itself to encode that rule. So it creates a fast, automatic neural pathway that you never have to consciously think about it again. This same mechanism helped your ancestors survive. If this type of berry made the tribe sick, avoid all berries that look like it. If this animal attacked, run from all animals that look like it. So it's fast, it's automatic, and does not discriminate experiences. And here's what we're going to the problem, that your brain doesn't discriminate. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a hot stove and a woman's reaction to your fetish. It just treats them the same way. To your nervous system, both register as danger. Both get the same treatment. Build a rule, avoid the pattern, protect yourself at all costs. So the exact mechanism that protects you from a burn is also quietly destroying your ability to build intimacy, connection, and a real life. So how does it work, you may ask? Well, for a generalization to create a rule and start running your behavior, usually three things happen. First, a very emotionally intense experience. The stronger the emotion attached to a moment, usually paired with shame, humiliation, rejection, fear, the faster and deeper the brain encodes it. To your brain, high emotion equals high survival priority, equals permanent and fast access memory. This is why one bad experience revealing your fetish can feel more true and more real than 100 interactions that were in fact, let's say, just neutral. Second, the brain also creates rules through repetition, or events with intensity so extreme that the brain treats a single event as if it happened 100 times. Trauma works this way. Deep humiliation works this way. Being exposed or mocked in front of others also works this way. Because the brain doesn't count events with accuracy. The brain counts emotional intensity, emotional weight. And third, the brain creates generalizing rules that in fact distort the objective reality through, absence of new evidence. Which, guys, it means that if you just stay being protected by these rules your brain creates, right? If you never go back and test that rule, if you're never willing to play with fire and instead retreat, hide, and avoid, your brain never receives the data it needs to just update. Your brain is going to freeze that rule exactly as it was written on the day it formed. Which means you can be living in 2026, but you are responding to a rule your brain wrote in 2009 or in 2000, 1986 or 1989 and calling it your reality. But that is not the objective reality. You'll see how the brain does that in a moment later in this video. But first, I also want to tell you something from my own experience. And it's something actually extremely personal to me about my own relationship with this kind of generalization and how it also affected my own life. Also, because I hope you can see that just because I'm an attractive woman, it doesn't mean that I'm immune to life. It doesn't mean that I'm immune to negative experiences, to traumas, or that I am discriminated by how the brain works, like some of you think. Yeah, I read your comments. So, all right. To me personally, it all started before I even understood actually what sexuality was, okay? My grandmother, God rest her soul, whom I loved deeply, who raised me, okay? She was extremely nurturing. She was very loving and very kind, but she was also extremely religious, and she had some very strict, rigid rules, traditional values. And I swear, she would scold me just for sitting in certain positions while I was playing with my toys. So I just want to be very clear, guys. I wasn't doing anything wrong, okay? I was just sitting in a certain way, playing and being a child, right? But something about how I held my body was, in her eyes, shameful. So she corrected it every single time by yelling at me. Shame, shame. That's not how you sit. Don't sit like that. That's shame. Very harshly, over and over and over again. And at that time, I didn't really understand why she was reacting like this. And then, a little later, she found photos from a birthday party that I was invited to, right? Now, photos of me actually kissing a boy, but not in some weird way, guys. Like, just the way kids sometimes do it at the birthday parties, right? A boy has had his arm around my neck, and we were just kissing, but like a simple peck. Nothing crazy. Oh my God. When my grandma saw those photos, she gave me a serious beating for it. She threw me on the floor, screaming at me. She made me feel like I've done something totally unforgivable. I was just a child. It was a birthday party. But you see, my brain didn't think grandmother was exaggerating. Grandma was just projecting, or grandma was wrong. My brain thought your body in space is a problem. Being seen as a girl, being seen as feminine, as desirable, as sexual in any way, even innocently, is dangerous. It means punishment. You will be punished for it. Then, a few years later, by the time I was, 12 or 13, and that foundation was already laid in my mind, like the rule was already created, because that beating and many others were extremely traumatic to me. So traumatic, I actually remember it very vividly, even today. Anyways, later on, a boy at school had a crush on me, all right? But this was a boy that I never gave attention to and I was never interested in. Well, what do you think he did? He started calling me a hoe. He started calling me a slut and spreading stories about me to absolutely everyone. And my brain did not question it. It just confirmed it. It confirmed the rule. He said, of course, this is what happens when you are visible, when you are cute and a girl, right? When you are seen as pretty, as attractive. Of course, there was nothing true about what he said. I had no sexual experience at that age. I had done nothing of that nature, ever. And I remember feeling so angry and asking myself, like, why? Why would he say something so untrue about me? But for my brain, that didn't matter because the rule was already written by someone I trusted. And now it was just being enforced again and written again by someone who wanted to hurt me. So there it was for me, just 2 layers. from completely different sources, which enforced one identical message. Being seen means being ashamed. Needless to say, I carried that rule with me a lot into my adult life till pretty late, till I finally started questioning everything and I got tired of shrinking myself. But that rule followed me even into my marriage. Funny enough, the moment my husband would point a camera at me, my whole nervous system would go into panic mode. I would feel so uncomfortable. And like this voice from my mind, I think it was just like my grandma's voice, would just yell at me, like would just tell me in my mind, like, this is shameful, you're a slut. And guys, that rule almost stopped me from ever showing up the way I do now, right? From breaking free from shame, from being seen, from getting creative, from exploring myself, my sexuality, what I'm passionate about, from building this channel even, from speaking about these topics, from doing this work right now. That shame was telling me to stay hidden. But luckily, I'm not a fearful person by nature, and I have a very adventurous personality, and I didn't listen to it. Okay? Okay, now let me show you some specific generalizations I see all the time in this community, which, by the way, these generalizations are also a reason why I pivoted the path of my channel. So I want you to hear yourself. Women will reject me because of my fetish. So the brain's logic is, I revealed it once or twice, she reacted badly, therefore all women will react badly. Therefore, never, ever reveal it. But here's what that logic doesn't include. It doesn't include that in most cases, the way it was revealed, with the shame felt when spoken about it, with shame in delivering the information, I know this is weird, but yeah, so the way it was communicated, with self-disgust, with self-hatred, that was much more louder than the fetish itself. And if you watched my previous video, you've learned now that women read that energy immediately. So you weren't rejected because of what you like, you were rejected because of how you felt about what you like. Those are not the same thing. Another generalization I see a lot is, I'm weak, I have no willpower, I will always relapse. And I've seen this in my research forums. Man after man wrote this about themselves. I don't have determination, I'm weak, I'm lazy, I can't follow through. And those are not observations, right? Not as something that could change maybe with the right approach, but they are making those statements as identity statements, like permanent attributes. They're fixed and they're defining. And I can sense where that is coming from, guys. It doesn't come from self-awareness. That is an identity they've internalized from generalization. But guys, nothing is permanent, not even those identities, not even those rules. And they can change if you guys are serious about it. Also, a lot of you guys say, no one will ever understand me or accept me. And this is one that is usually formed earlier, right? And it runs extremely deep. Sometimes it comes from a parent reaction or from a colleague at school. Sometimes it comes from the very first person you trusted with the truth and reacted in a negative way. And from that one moment, the rule became total. Who I am is not acceptable. And the proof? Well, you never told anyone else. Which means your brain has never received a single piece of evidence that that rule might be actually wrong. I see this a lot. It's like, it's my looks, my height, my genetics, maybe it's my facial feature, maybe I'm just ugly. And I want to be extremely direct with you on this one because it's extremely common. When a man writes, And one of you actually did write this comment that women require at least 6 feet 4 inches or at least 188 centimeters height or a trust fund or a six-pack ab to even be considered by a below average woman. It makes me shake my head. Because that is not facts, guys. And there are a myriad of examples that contradicts that assessment of dating. That is nothing but a generalization so complete, it has become the worldview of many of you. But once a worldview forms, the brain only admits evidence that confirms it. And that is how your reality gets completely distorted by allowing every rejection become proof. And then every success story from another man who doesn't fit the distorted worldview you live by, it's either completely ignored, dismissed, or becomes the exception. And then the system closes. No new information can enter, and that is how you become the curator of your own prison. Now, if you are recognizing yourself in any of this, pause for a moment, go to the description right now and download the Freaking Shame Exit Kit. It's the first concrete step towards interrupting this before it takes another month, another year, another relationship from you. It's free, it's there, so go get it. And if you want to help me continue these conversations, join my Patreon. Also, the 14-day self-command reset is coming soon, and spots on the waitlist are limited. The link is also in the description. And if this video is landing for you, hit like right now and subscribe to the channel. All right, now, here is how generalization actually distorts the reality you experience every day. And not just in theory, but in your actual life. Listen, generalization makes exceptions to the rule totally invisible. And also not because they're in fact exceptions, but because once your brain has a rule, it acts like a filter. It filters incoming information to protect that rule. And that is why cliches like what you focus on grows exist. If you only focus on the painful experiences and examples, they will take up much more space in your brain and in your life than it's necessary. And when a woman who would be genuinely curious about your fetish appears, your brain doesn't register her openness. When a moment of real connection that was actually available to you shows up, your nervous system marks it as too risky before you even consciously notice it. So you are not seeing the world for what it actually is. You are seeing a world that has been pre-edited by a rule formed years ago in a completely different context by a version of you that no longer exists. Generalization also collapses time. It takes a past experience and pastes it directly over the present moment. The woman in front of you right now is not the woman who humiliated you in 2015. The situation you're in today is not the situation that hurt you back then. But your nervous system responds as if they're identical. Because the rule doesn't have a timestamp. Your reaction is calibrated to something that is over. The present moment is happening, and you are somewhere else entirely. I know what it feels like to run your life by a rule that was handed to you by someone who was wrong. My grandmother was wrong. That boy was wrong. They were operating from their own pain, from their own limitations, their own broken rules, and they handed those rules to me before I had any way to evaluate them. And maybe the same is true for you. Maybe the rule running your life right now was written by a parent who didn't understand you, or a partner who was too afraid to be honest. Maybe it was a colleague who needed someone to feel smaller so they can feel better about themselves. In other words, those rules were created by someone who was never qualified to define you. Just got there first, before you got a chance to do it. And you just accepted it as truth. So the question is not whether the rule made sense when it was written, because it probably did make some sense back then, right? Given what was happening. The question is whether you are going to let it keep running in a life that has moved on, in a body that has grown up, that has now more experience, in a world that is not the same world it was then. Okay, so practical section of the video. What can you do about it? And I'm not talking about positive thinking or telling yourself you are amazing until you believe it. That really doesn't work, okay? Your nervous system is not going to believe that when you trained it to believe the contrary for years, okay? What you actually do is examine the evidence first, okay? Examine the evidence your brain actually used to build a rule in the first place. And then just start poking holes into it. When you catch yourself making a definite statement like that about women, about yourself, about your future, stop, pause, and ask yourself some questions. First, how many data points is this actually based on? And be specific. How many times? How many different people in how many different circumstances? Is every woman actually 2 women? Is I always fail actually 3 attempts over 6 years? Your brain will insist the sample field is enormous, but name the actual number. Do it out loud if you can. And then observe what happens to the certainty. Observe what happens to that rule. Then second, was the sample representative or was it loaded emotionally? Were those experiences from a time when you were operating from deep shame, which would have shaped everything about how you showed up? Were the people involved the right people? Were you revealing something in a way that quietly said, I think this is wrong about me? I think this is weird because everyone else thinks so? Because of course you were. Because that's what you've been taught to believe. Bad data in, bad belief, and bad results out. A biased experiment doesn't produce accurate results. It just can't. And then finally, have I actually tested this rule recently? Or am I living by something I wrote years ago and never revisited? The man who gave up at 24 is still making that decision. The man who has never told a single soul is still being governed by the first time he imagined how someone might react. You are not that version of you anymore. And also, the world is not the same world. When was the last time you actually tested that rule? You can use these questions as prompts to write down in your journal, in your notebook. And it's like taking a magnifying glass and looking deeply into those rules that your brain created. Start poking holes in them. Make a definite decision to shift your focus towards a different story. Start finding evidence to the contrary of your beliefs. And extremely important, keep an open mind. Now I think you can start seeing a little more clearly how your life, your beliefs, and your worldview are your responsibility and yours only. No one can do this work for you. I hate to break it to you. No one will come and save you, okay? No dom, no e-girlfriend, no amount of shame, no amount of humiliation mixed with pleasure can change this for you. Only honest introspection. And only you can do that. Okay? So here's what I want you to take away from this. You're not broken. You are not uniquely defective. You are not someone for whom the rules of growth and connection and intimacy do not apply. Okay? You are just someone who had rules written for you by people who were many times wrong, many times limited, and operating from their own unexamined pain before you even had the language or the perspective to question them. And you just lived by those rules so long that you forgot that they were just rules. You thought that they were reality, but they are not reality. They're patterns, and as I always say, patterns can be interrupted. And honestly, that is not something that I invented. I'm not being original with this. It's just something called neuroplasticity, okay? The brain that built the rule can build a different rule, a different one. But only if you give it new experiences to learn from. Only if you stay in the room a little longer than the fear says so. Only if you take one small, honest risk instead of running the old script one more time. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to stop letting a rule written in your worst moment make decisions for your best ones. You are more than that rule. You always were. Now, if you want support in actually doing this work and not just understand it intellectually, that doesn't really help. You just need to move through it, okay? Go in the description and grab the free King Shame Exit Kit. Also, the 14-day self-command reset is going to come soon, so get on the waitlist right now. The link is below because this is the structured program that takes everything in this video and turns it into daily action. And if you want to support the show, join me on Patreon. And if this video gave you something real, like it and share it with one person who needs it. And also subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I make all of this new content for the man who's done waiting for the savior or for life to just miraculously change, but who's ready to live the life he wants. And before you go, I want to know if this landed for you. Leave one simple comment, okay? Just leave ready. That's it. Your comment is telling me that you made it to the end and that this is actually resonating with the people I'm making this for. Remember, I love you and I'll see you in the next one.